gentlemen, please welcome.
And we are live once again. Episode 8, MCW Cast. I'm Legacy MCW announcer Larry Legend.
I'm Dan McDevitt.
And I'm Tara. Welcome.
Well, back again.
There we are. In episode 8, getting a lot of great feedback over the weeks, the months now. We can honestly say the months.
Hey, and I see you gave Ken a nod there on Twitter for one of those matches we were talking about.
The ringless matches.
Yeah,
right?
the no ring matches, and that's it can happen very organically like that. You know, Casanova Valentine, the innovator, the king of the no ring death matches.
Yeah, he maybe gave a slight invitation to Ken.
Well, Casanova has a show that he's putting together that's about to debut on Fight TV. They did a preview on YouTube. You can watch it right now on YouTube. It's called New Fear City, and it's really going to be an episodic no-ring death match show, and I think Ken would be tailor-made for that. And what I was going to say is it happens organically like that. You just got to know how to be really good at Twitter. So I made sure to tag Casanova Valentine, No Peace Underground, some of the really out there no-ring productions. And yeah, Cass was like, hey, Ken Dixon, let's do a no-ring soon. And Ken tweeted back, don't tempt me with a good time, so...
Yeah.
Ken was very vocal about his enjoyment of, hurting things and hurting people and beating people up. So this sounds like this could be the perfect opportunity.
Yeah. It's funny, when we look back on episode 7, he talked about a myriad of topics, but I felt like that when we started getting into the no-ring matches, he kind of perked up a little bit. Like, oh, yeah. I really see the appeal of those. I'd love to get involved. And I'm like, okay.
You can tell he has a real interest in it. Absolutely. I noticed the same thing.
Yeah, well, history of violence.
Right.
So it's tailor-made for him. But, yes, we are rocking and rolling, as we like to say here. Did we get any new subscribers, any new members in the coffee club?
Yeah, I want to thank Kyle and Mitchell Heyman and Cindy and Corbin for their support. They bought us some coffees last week, and we thank you for that. And
yes,
glad
indeed.
that you're following us.
And now we're pretty much up and running on all the major podcasts.
All of them, yeah.
Just, people watching on Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube, which is how they can consume it visually, watching the video. But from if you're just audio, we're pretty much everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Pocket Cast, SoundCloud, Spotify, Radio Public. Yeah, we've got it all covered now. And
if you are consuming, only digitally, which is how a lot of people watch their podcasts. We'd invite them to maybe jump on our YouTube page and kind of check out our content. If you're a wrestling fan, every week we upload. Right now we're not running live events, but we are every Friday on our YouTube. We upload Flashback Friday matches of the weeks. We got 20 plus years of history.
Yeah.
Literally thousands of matches. And this past week was one I found interesting. It was a triple threat match from 2017, I believe. It was MJF versus Brandon Scott versus Anthony Henry. Anthony Henry, who just signed with WWE, and obviously MJF, who's on his way to becoming a major star. That was this past week's Flashback Friday. So go on to our MCW Pro Wrestling on YouTube and make sure to subscribe to that YouTube channel for that content.
Yep, a great match between MJF and, like you said, the recently acquired property of WWE. I think that's really funny that everyone takes that picture that says property of
Right.
WWE. Anthony Henry.
And no surprise what you still talking about, say, Anthony Henry and our YouTube page. His match versus Leo versus Leo Rush continues to be the top watched match on our YouTube page, probably for like 6 months running. I think just last month it did like 60,000 views or something like that. In the last month, it's continuously the number one match. Not a surprise. It was special. Something.
I'll tell you one thing. In that match in particular, I don't want to stay on it too long. Anthony Henry was quite vicious, and Leo takes a real good butt kicking. So I think that's one of the reasons I remember that match distinctly. Just the two styles getting together, kind of a dream match in a lot of ways, and just how really Anthony Henry tapped into that vicious side of him. And as a fan, I kind of was like, hey, man, take it easy up there, man. This is just a show. You don't got to hurt the kid, So he really did his job. And again, Leo, being such a good seller, being in all that agony, it's definitely worth a look.
And to continue to give credit, say, to Leo, Leo is actually how we discovered Anthony Henry. He's actually the one that called me and was like, hey, I wrestled this guy. I think he'd wrestled him in like Carolina.
Yeah.
Like, you got to bring this guy in and let me wrestle him. So Leo was the one that kind of brought Anthony Henry to us at the time. I hadn't heard of him. But Leo kind of brought attention. And Leo was always great for that. A lot of the matches we had with Leo Rush when he was here was because he would call me and say, hey, I wrestled this guy here. We got to bring this guy down.
Yeah, you bought the Janela Leo tour.
Joey
That
Janela.
I call it a tour because they've done it so many places. And Leo,
Same thing.
you
Leo
know.
called me and was like, you got to bring this Joey Janela in. We chatted it up. And I said, all right. I always, you know, he earned trust with me. And I would just, okay, man, I would tell Dean or RJ, hey, let's, you know, Leo wants to get this guy in or get that guy in, get him in. So
Awesome, yeah.
And if you're watching on Facebook, too, if you are watching on a live stream on Facebook, make sure to right now share.
Oh, yeah.
Feed,
Yeah.
like it, comment it, give us comments in there. You don't have to just use the Twitter if you're not a Twitterer.
Not everyone is.
You can
I
post
admit
your
that I'm not.
comments in the feed.
Yep.
And we'll go back and just tell us what you think. But
Yeah,
make sure you
I
share,
do. I go
like, and
back
comment
every
in the
week.
feed. It helps the algorithm and helps push the feed out a little bit more.
Indeed. And if you really want to help us out, share it on YouTube as well. YouTube has a share option right underneath the video as it's going on. You can tweet it. You can share the YouTube to your Facebook, you know, do a little cross-promotional branding here with all of the social networks.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, that's going to take us to our first break, I think. And, you know, then we got our guest, this week's guest.
For episode number 8, why don't you give us the intro? Later?
It's going to be MCW Pro Women's Champion, the Gia Scott.
Fuel the MCW Cast by visiting buymeacoffee.com/MCWcast. And for just $3, you can buy the cast a coffee. Or you can choose to become a member of the cast for just $5 a month and get several additional perks. That's buymeacoffee.com/MCWcast.
And we're back here with our in-studio guest, MCW Pro Women's Champion, the Gia Scott. Gia, welcome to the MCW Cast.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Thanks for coming on.
Indeed. And so far, we've been really kind of rocking with a lot of the first guests having attained accolades. We've had the Shane Shamrock Memorial Cup winner, Brandon Scott, on. Of course, MCW Rage TV champion, Leo Rush, on. The Sons of Soldiers of Savagery, current Ring of Honor, 2/3 of the 6-man tag team champions. And now we've got another champion in our midst, MCW Pro Women's Champion, Gia Scott. So you are amongst great company is what this long-winded intro is really getting at the aim of it. So, yeah, we're glad that you came and graced us with the presence of the championship.
Oh, no problem. She's got to show off Alicia a little bit more, you know, every now and then.
Now, is that what you call her, Alicia?
No, Felicia.
Oh, Felicia, okay. Well, bye.
Yeah.
Larry, do you remember, I got to take you back a couple of years, do you remember the night that we introduced the MCW Women's Championship belt to the MCW fans? Do you remember?
I remember it. I remember.
Was you and me.
It was one of those times where I really felt, you know, and even being here right now for the cast, where I felt like that MCW was really my home because this was the first new championship to be introduced to the MCW echelon of titles in years. So I just happened to maybe be down visiting for the holidays or whatever it was, and Dan, you and Bruiser were like, you got to come on down. I didn't even know what it was all about, and then I saw we had this huge title ceremony presentation. I was like, yeah, I'm in the right place. You know,
you had done the introductions, and I came out and I presented it.
Yeah.
I remember holding it up. Yeah, I thought that just crossed my mind just now as I was sitting here looking. I was like, wait, I remember introducing this.
That's right. So our lineage in MCW as veterans, as OGs, is connected directly to the championship. We introduced it to the crowd, and it's still beautiful.
Oh, my gosh. Like, I love the color blue. So, like, just staring at it like every single day is just like, such a beauty.
Yeah.
And everything. So.
Do you have a special place in your house where you display
Oh
it?
yeah, I put it like right in the center of my house. So when everybody comes in the door and they look like they turn to the right, and I was like, oh, right there. And then like, oh, you're a champion. Like, heck yeah, I'm a champion. And then there's the tag title right there too. But it's right there. You can't miss it.
Yeah.
You can't miss it.
You guys, you put people on notice when they come into your place.
Oh yeah.
The home of champions.
Oh yeah, home of champions. You gotta look at it. You gotta see it. You gotta be like, ooh, what's this? We'll tell you what it is.
Now, how's that been? Having a relationship in the industry and also being with another champion. What was that journey, or what has it been like for you to both be recognized champions here in MCW Pro and kind of making a name for yourselves together as a power couple.
Because for those that don't know, that may be watching, you're with dating one half of the current
Yes,
MCW
Dion.
tag team champions.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's been a big roller coaster. Just from starting off as just students and then being able to win championships here at MCW. It's been a roller coaster. Just being able for me to be able to get the MCW Women's Championship, that's all I wanted when I first started. And to be able to have it, it was a really bittersweet moment for me to obtain it. And for Dion, it was just like, I'm here, I'm at the top of the mountain, like, this is mine. And then every time, like, we're home and sometimes we can be talking about wrestling, he's like, yeah, well, my title is bigger than yours. And I'm like, all right, well, I got the title. I got a championship first, so what's up? So we'll go back and forth about that. He's like, your title's so small, like, it's not even heavy. Like, feel mine's heavier. And I'm like, okay, whatever. I don't care. Like, this is my Felicia. She's mine. I'm just happy to have her.
Right on, yeah.
It's been a big roller coaster and everything. And it's, like, different from when, like, people recognize you because like you are a champion versus like when I first started nobody knew me.
Yeah.
So it's very much different. Like I still consider myself like a regular person and whatnot, and I'll never have that change about me. But I remember, I'm sorry, I'm jumping around, but I remember
No, you're fine.
when Dion won the title, and I'll never forget. I think it was me and a group of friends. We went to Royal Farms because we wanted to stop, and after the show, you know, there's like Royal Farms like right up the street. So he's like, I'm going to take this title in with me. And I'm like, please, God, no, don't do it. He's like, no, I'm taking it in with me.
Did he?
So, oh, no, he did.
Yeah, I bet he did.
You could ask him yourself. Like, so what happened was that we're going around Royal Farms, and he's like, I'm the champion. Do I get a champion's discount? And I'm like,
Oh, my gosh.
what?
All
He's
to
like,
his head.
Like on his shoulder, and he's like, I'm the champion. Do I get like a champion discount on the chicken? And this woman's like looking at him. And she's like, no.
Yeah.
I'm like, I told you, just please put the title away or something. He's like, no, I'm a champion. I got fun and I got to show off with it. And I'm like, okay, but not at Royal Farms.
Right.
Not
Right, like
here.
go to an elementary school, read to school children,
Yes.
take the
Yeah.
belt then.
Yeah.
Like, let's go there. Let's something else, not at Royal Farms. Like, let's not do this here.
That must have been one of his earlier title reigns, I would imagine. And it's funny that you mentioned that because, Dan, you may not remember this, but at one point, Leo and Patrick were the MCW Tag Team Champions, and they had a booking in New York. And I remember they bought the MCW titles with them. And Leo, being in New York and not knowing this locker room, he left his title in the car. Patrick brought his title in to the venue, I guess, to kind of like Dion flaunt, like I'm a recognized champion. Went out to do his match. Title's just in the backstage area in his bag. And, you know, I pulled him aside and I'm like, this is the MCW Tag Team Championship. I wouldn't expect to see it in a New York City locker room, but here it is. What's it doing? It's just laying here. And Patrick was like, oh, yeah, I just bought it. And I was like, Leo, did you bring yours? And he's like, yeah, but mine's in the car.
Oh,
And I look at Patrick and I was like, yeah, that's a safe place for it to be because we don't know these people and who might be like, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, early on in Patrick's career, maybe just kind of being like gleaming in his eyes that I'm a champion. Like, you know, I want everyone to see me with this. But that is quite the story. You kind of threw Dion under the bus there. And when we have him on, I'm going to be like, so, you hear that fried chicken with the championship belt at Royal Farms? Or
I would love to bust Dion's chops about it. But when I was 19 and I won the MEWF Light Heavyweight Championship, I couldn't wait to take it into work the next Monday. At Chuck E. Cheese.
Yeah.
I'd walk around the kitchen, and I had it with me at work, and I put it up on the shelf.
Right.
True story.
I'm a recognized
So I love to bust
champion.
his
Yeah.
chops.
Yeah.
And I took it and I brought it into work in the kitchen at Chuck E. Cheese.
Oh my God!
I set it up on the shelf, and I went about making pizza.
Yeah.
Yeah,
lying.
true story. And the Chuck E. Cheese in Catonsville, it was in Westview. Yeah, I was just so proud. You know what I mean? I couldn't wait to bring it into work and show everybody in the kitchen at Chuck E. Cheese.
Well, that was what title was it now?
The MEWF Light Heavyweight Champion.
Oh, the light heavyweight. Okay, yeah, because the Mid-Atlantic was a really beautiful belt, that red leather belt with the silver.
Yeah.
I remember that Bob Starr had that last.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, that's just growing pains. And speaking of growing pains, you know, with all of our guests here on the MCW Cast, we like to hear about the origins. Like, how Gia first discovered and
Yeah, the
got
beginning. How did you
yeah.
get into wrestling? What got you? What
Oh,
made
boy.
you? What made you want to chase this crazy dream?
So in the beginning, I really don't. I know everyone has like age, like I started at 5 or I started at 3. I don't remember what age I was. I really don't. But I know that my uncle was still is, heavily into watching wrestling. So I'm probably like coming down the stairs and I see like him watching wrestling. I don't know who's on at the moment, but I'm like, oh, they're beating each other up. Okay, let me go watch. I'm like, I don't know what this is. So I go over and I sit down. Like, I'm probably playing with something in my hands. I remember it was probably a game. It might have been like a Game Boy or whatnot. So I'm like sitting there watching it with him. I don't know who these people are. I'm just looking and watching. So from there, we would continue to watch it together. And sometimes we wouldn't be able to because I'll be over there with my aunt and my uncle on the weekends, and on the weekdays I would be with my mom because I was in school and whatnot.
Right.
And the only exception I could not watch wrestling at the time was on Mondays. And for me being in elementary school, and I think Raw started at like 9 or was it 8 or something like that?
8.
Maybe
8,
9,
yeah.
8.
8 to
And they moved it around. I think.
Yeah.
They try to compete with one another.
right. Yeah.
So,
But it was during the Monday Night Wars, I guess.
Yeah.
Or
for
Do you-
me, it was more around when
God, I'm dating myself. It was probably later than the Monday Night
It
Wars.
was-
Yeah, I was thinking
just
that
thinking
too, yeah.
too.
Yeah,
Like,
I
it
thought
wasn't-
about her age and was like, oh yeah, I am like 3 times her age.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Like, who
Yeah.
do you remember first kind of being like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm latched onto this person. I want to watch to see what they're going to do. Who was like your first kind of idol, if you will?
from what I was told, my aunt told me it was The Rock.
Of course.
And I don't remember that because I was
Probably.
so
Yeah.
young. I
Right.
don't remember. I'm like, she was like, yeah, it was The Rock. I'm like, are you sure? She's like, yeah, it was. And I'm like,
I mean,
okay, all right. If you say it was, then it was.
Now, who was the first female wrestler that you were inspired by or took a liking to?
I know everyone says this, but I have a reasoning for why I like both of them. And of course, it was Trish and Lita. The reason for it is because when I was younger, I was bullied heavily just for being tall, which is really weird. I was like one of the tallest kids when I was growing up. I was probably one of the tallest kindergartner as well. But with Trish, she was really pretty, but also she was wrestling. And from me just seeing guys just doing it, I was like, wow, this is actually pretty cool. Like someone who's pretty and can do this, like this is awesome.
Right.
And then I saw Lita. She was the opposite of Trish, just versus her being like kind of pretty, preppy and whatnot. Lita was like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like alternative. She was
Yeah.
the alternative of Trish, and she was still Lita was still pretty, but
Yeah.
she looked very punk. She looked like, I can't even say what I want to say, but she looked like she could really kick someone's butt.
Yeah.
Putting that in a lighter
Yeah, that-
perspective.
That was
Yeah.
one of that was the uniqueness that she brought to
Yeah.
that period. She wasn't blonde. She wasn't,
No.
she didn't have the same typical look, and she could bring it.
And
So
I
yeah,
think she had tattoos.
Yeah.
Yeah, she had
Yeah.
tattoos. So I was just like, man, like
right.
this girl is awesome.
Yeah.
So I like wanted to like inspire to be something of that, or just when I was watching them, I was like, man, I wish I could be like cool, confident, or pretty when I go to school, like, because I did not have a lot of self-esteem as a kid, and I know some people don't, but for me, when I was being bullied, I didn't really have that at the moment. I was like, man, I wish I could be like these women because
Yeah.
they look so awesome and so cool. So those were two of my biggest inspiration as far as women when I was growing up.
So we're talking Lita, Trish, The Rock. I'm going to say, yeah, maybe Ruthless Aggression, like 2005, 2006 is what I'm going
Sounds
to
right.
possibly think that was when you really got
Yeah.
hooked and enamored to the world of
Yeah.
professional wrestling.
Yeah, that was around the time that I was watching everything, and it's funny because like I wasn't a Raw girl. I was a SmackDown girl because at the time they came on Fridays. Well, yeah, at the time they came on Fridays, and that was the only time I could really watch wrestling because it's a Friday, there's no school on
School, right.
Saturday.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, my mom really didn't care, like, if I was up, well, I mean, she would want us to go to bed at, like, a good time, but,
Yeah.
like, she wouldn't be like, all right, it's, like, 10, go to
Because
bed.
it's Friday. It's
Yeah.
you've been going to bed on time all week. So
Yeah,
let the
so-
kids,
Yeah, so she let me watch and everything, and I remember just the big old blue fist.
Okay, yeah. So that's
Yeah.
definitely Ruthless Aggression.
The big
Yeah.
old blue fist. I remember all of that, and oh man, like it was just so awesome to watch as a kid. Like, and I think the one thing I did like about it is that the fact that it was cool, and also like a lot of people at the time didn't like it. That from where I was from, a lot of people didn't really like it because I think at the time they were like saying like, oh, wrestling's fake and whatnot. So I didn't care. I was like, I like it. It's cool. It looks awesome. So I'm gonna continue to keep watching it.
Wow.
So we've all battled through that.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And,
that's
again, a lot older than you, but even the one thing that has changed is that every once in a while, like the Attitude Era, wrestling will go through these phases where it gets really cool, but then it goes back to it's fake.
Isn't it like a 7-year cycle or
It
something?
is.
Where
It's
no, it
probably
really
a
is. Like
10-year
it's
really
no,
is,
like
so
if you
it
look at the
happens, yeah.
ratings and everything, and
Yeah.
they'll track it. It does. It ebbs and flows in like a 7-year cycle where it's
Believe
up on
me,
top and
yeah.
then it drops. And having lived through some of these
living
cycles,
through
multiple
a couple
cycles.
because we're a little bit older than you, but not much.
well, as a matter of, I mean, to hammer it forth, like we remember the first episode of SmackDown, and now here you are, a guest that's talking about how SmackDown was the show that you really got to see, and even when it was on Friday nights, remember SmackDown was Thursday nights, and then it moved to Friday, and we're like, what are they doing? It's on Friday. That's
I remember pre-SmackDown days.
Yeah,
when
yeah.
SmackDown wasn't even a thing.
you just had Raw. We remember Superstar days, you know.
Well, we had In Your House.
Uh-huh,
We had
yeah.
that. Wasn't it In Your House?
Right,
Yeah, that's. I think so. Yeah,
That
I
was the
remember.
90s. So it was the same. When I was getting into it in the 90s, that was always what I'd hear when early 90s and this and why you want to do that? It's fake. It's this. It's that. And then all of a sudden, as we got closer to the close of that decade, all of a sudden the Monday Night Wars happened, and then wrestling became for probably 7 or 8 years the really cool thing that everybody Stone Cold and NWO,
Right.
and then it was cool. And
Right.
then it went back to
Yeah, everyone was like, oh, wrestling's awesome. Wrestling's cool. Like, did you see that? And whatnot. So I totally
Well, and then
understand.
there was this period of a lot of movie crossovers too, following this time period that you're talking about, where The Rock was in multiple movies.
Yep.
There was a lot of crossover where people who weren't wrestling fans all of a sudden were like, "Oh, that guy, he's a wrestler too," or
Yeah.
you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I think that it was just a flow of entertainment there during that time period that got people outside of the wrestling world looking at wrestling. So yeah. Now, what was the moment that you decided you wanted to be a wrestler?
Oh boy, I'll never forget this. During this time, it was when the Authority was still together.
Okay.
And I'll never forget. It was a December show. It was probably like the end of December. I forgot what show it was, but all I remember is that Seth Rollins was gonna curb stomp Edge's head. I forgot, I think it was maybe had something to do with John Cena, maybe at the time. I'm not completely sure, but all I can remember was that he was like, I'm gonna do it, and I'm like, oh my God, please don't do it to Edge, please no.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Edge had
Yeah.
come back as a special guest, and
Yeah.
Seth Rollins decided to use him. Like, I'm going to kill him because
Yeah.
he has a bad neck, and if I give him a curb stomp, he could die.
Yes.
And to get John Cena to acquiesce and give him his way. Yeah.
Yes, I was so scared. I'm like, please don't do this to Edge. And I remember like Edge being my everything at the time, and then I'm like, please don't do this to him. And I'm like, I'm on the verge of tears because he's really about to actually end this guy. And then the crowd is into it, you can hear the crowd. And they're like, no, don't do it. And at that moment, once the show ended and everything, and I'm just in awe, I was really emotionally invested in what was just going on. And then being there for that time, because I only know that I wanted to do 2 things in my life, was either modeling or wrestling. And the modeling didn't work out, so when I kind of went to the show with my uncle, and I'm hearing the crowd, you're getting into it, and literally the sound of the mat, because I've never really been kind of that close to a mat before, and just hearing it and the sound, and I think they had pyro then, maybe Kane was there too. Did not like his entrance, but the fact that I was able to absorb everything in within the matter of hours is then once the show ended, I'm like, man, I really want to do wrestling. They had everybody invested and involved, and I'm just what if I can do that? Maybe I can do that. So that's where it all started.
How old were you,
there.
at that point? Just wondering.
I want
when
to.
you were I want to do this.
I want to say 15 or 16.
Yeah.
Okay. And was that a show at the Baltimore Arena?
Yes.
Okay.
I would want to say 15 or 16 because I remember after that, I asked my mom and I said, Mom, I think I want to become a pro wrestler. And she's like, okay. And I'm like, I think I want to go to a couple of schools. And she's like, okay. And then I was like, I got a couple in mind. And we looked at a few. And the sad part about this is when I was like 15 or 16, I contacted a lot of schools. And some of them got back to me, some of them didn't. And some of them said that you have to be 18 or older. And I'm just like, man, like, this is really hard. Like, I got to wait until I'm 18. But then I remembered, I was like, wait, didn't my uncle, like, take me to, like, a show? And I was like, wait, no, he did. So I contacted him, and I was like, hey, what was that show that you took me to again? And he was like, it was MCW. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I go on the website, and I'm, like, looking at it, and I'm, like, studying it, like, up and down.
And what show was that?
The show was The Inferno. It had Booker T there. It was
The Green Room.
The Green Room. Yes,
Yep.
it was the Green Room. And I remember, like, that was the first time, like, I was actually near a ring, because I've always seen it on TV. I've always, like, looked at it on TV or computer and whatnot. So I'd never been in front of a ring like that before.
And that close up front atmosphere of an independent, did that kind of make you maybe connect to it more, like just being really, like, almost like you can touch it, like not like WWE at the arena, everything seems so far away, but that's what always attracted me when I was younger and would go to indies and find indies in the local area. I'd be like, man, this is so much different. Because you can almost, like, touch it. You know,
I was like, I'm that close to the ring, and I'm like, I want to get in.
That's you right there, isn't it? In the front row.
Yeah,
right there.
That's my uncle. That's me. And
hugging Booker T.
Look at that.
It was awesome. Like, we were that close.
Charles.
Yep.
Long time fan, Charles Donaghy.
I remember that I was very hesitant about going to MCW because I was so heavy on, like, watching WWE. And then, like, how it started was my uncle was like, hey, I got front row seats. And I'm like, ooh, where? And he's like, to this wrestling show. And I'm like, is it WWE? He's like, no. And I'm like, okay. And he was like, Booker T is going to be there. I'm like, I'm sold. I'm sold. So we go there, and everything is, like, you know, different. It's a different atmosphere, but that's okay, because towards the end of it, I was hooked. I was like, when's the next show? Where are we going to the next show?
The Green Room crowd was very enthusiastic. And, you know, the building not so much, but, like, the crowd, like, you've talked a couple of times about that energy from the crowd. And the Green Room fans 100% could bring it.
Yes.
Yeah, I definitely remember that.
It was entirely there, and I remember my uncle, like, we both fell in love with it for our first time. And for him, I'd say Black Wall Street was the reason why he fell in love. Like, he saw them. They were, like, a really strong, dominant group. And he was like, that's my team right there. And he got a shirt that same day. And I didn't like them. And the only reason why is because, well, yes, I'm pretty sure they were heel at the time. And the only person I did not like in that group was Amber Rodriguez. I did not like her. And she just didn't want to touch anybody. And I'm like, what makes her better than, like, everyone else? Like, why does she want to touch anybody? So I didn't like her for the longest time. And it was just because of them that we were able to connect and brought us back into, oh, there she is. And that's how... we were able to come back because we were able to know more people. Like, it started from Black Wall Street, and it grew bigger and then bigger and then bigger and whatnot. And so it just grew from there. So, like, it's amazing. Like, it feels like a long time ago, but it
was 7 years ago.
We're going to talk more about that after we take a quick break. We're going to talk about how you signing up at the MCW Pro Wrestling Training Center and talk a little bit more about that journey and some of the competitors you faced along the way. So stay tuned. We'll be right back with the MCW Women's Champion, Gia Scott.
Show your support for the MCW Cast while sporting some great gear by going to teespring.com/stores/MCWcast. You can pick up a full line of official MCW Cast merchandise, from coffee mugs and face coverings to t-shirts and sweatshirts. Visit teespring.com/stores/MCWcast.
All right, back with MCW Women's Champion Gia Scott. So, Gia, when was it? Refresh my memory. When you actually decided to come and sign up at the training center.
So I remember that at the time I was probably 2 months from just turning 18, and I remember the class was, I believe, April. It was in the earliest of April. And during that time of last year, my mother passed away. And I remember that she kind of put money away for me, my brother, and my sister. I'm the middle child, just throwing that out there. But I wanted to use the money to get into wrestling, because I remember when I was looking at the MCW page, it killed my heart that the whole total package was $3,000.
That's what it's always actually been, believe it or not. Even from
20 years ago.
Yeah, it's $3,000. Yeah.
No inflation here.
I see schools now $5,000.
Yeah. Well, actually, $3,000 I think is for wrestler, but if you were ref or manager or second, it was $1,500
right.
because that was the category that I fell into when I got involved. I didn't want to be a wrestler, so I got the ref manager second rate. But yeah, it's pretty accurate.
It broke my 16-year-old heart.
Oh yeah, at 16, that seems like $1 million. Like, how am I gonna get $3,000?
It broke my heart at 18.
Right?
I'm like I got the money, and I remember that I'm driving to the MCW school with my uncle, because he was the one that I started, he got me into wrestling, and he wanted to take me there. And so I'm like, I have this money in my hand, and I'm like, I'm never going to ever hold this amount in my hand ever again. But it's for a good cause, because I know if I had that money today, I'd probably use it on whatever. Anything besides wrestling. And I thought to myself, I was like, you're getting this money. Now, you can do whatever you want with this money, because it's $3,000. But let's say 5 years from now, and you don't have that money anymore, and you're looking back, you're like, man, I had $3,000. I could have used that to be a wrestler. What if I was a wrestler? Anything could have happened. Mm-hmm. So I didn't want to be 5 years from now and looking back and man, I could have been a wrestler, So I remember I went to the school with my uncle. Dean was the one who does the paperwork. RJ will say I never do paperwork, so I always fell on Dean.
That is true.
Always fell on Dean. So I'm here, and Dean asked me, he was like, okay, how old are you? And I'm like, I'm 18. He's like, oh, you're a baby. I'm like, yeah, I'm a baby. So sign up, gave him the money and everything and whatnot, and it was just off to the races from there. I believe in my beginning class, I was the only girl there. I was the only one that signed up and whatnot. So it was hard.
What was your I was going to ask you, what was your initial impression? A lot harder than you thought?
So my impression was that yes, it was going to be hard, but I didn't think it'd be that hard. Intense cardio, wrestling. What took me out mostly was the bump, because I remember, I think I was a few days in, and that Wednesday I was in high school and I had an SAT test to take care of, and my teacher said if you don't do this, you're not gonna get into college or something of that reason. I'm like, all right, fine, I'll go. So I remember that Tuesday, once training was over, I went home, I slept, I woke up, and I'm like, I can't turn my head. I'm like, oh, why does my back hurt? And I was really thinking about not going to school the next day, but I was like, I have to go. So I went, and I was just like, man, I'm so sore. I don't want to be in school. I want to just rest and whatever. So I wasn't expecting it to be really intense on my body. I knew it was going to be intense, and it was going to be hard. And I feel like a lot of people don't realize that.
That's the truth.
Yeah.
The truth is the ring.
Yeah.
When I always, when I tell, all the years I've been doing this, it's the ring is the reality check.
Yes.
Right.
That make, and so many people over the years, and you probably get it too, I'm sure, that's always the conversation, and people will say, oh yeah, well, what you did that in wrestling, well, what's that? Is that ring what's it made of to make it so soft? And I'm like, it's anything but. I'm like, it's wood and steel and a little bit of padding, and I'll never forget too my first bumps, and just bone jarring and your body, and I'm like, oh my God. You know what I mean? This is what the ring feels like, because it's nothing like people imagine it feels like. They think it's a mattress full of feathers, and you jump on it, it's like,
and whatnot.
And it's nothing like that.
I remember tears in my eyes walking to the parking lot, through the parking lot after training, oh my God, this hurts so bad. And, the thing is, picture if you're a 270, 280 pound man, right? It's still hurting. It's still jarring. Now picture you being a 120 pound female. Like, we just don't have the same padding in the same places. So when we're landing, for example, running the ropes. Now, I know you're a little bit taller than I am. But like, that hurt me more than anything because just where it was hitting, I didn't have any, like, it was my shoulder blades stick out there, you know? So I was hitting that every time, and it was that repetitive motion, and it hurt so bad. And I completely understand that whole bone feeling through your whole body where you're like, everything hurts. I get it.
Like, I remember we had to run the ropes, and it was just, it wasn't like, because I could reach it, like, it would hit like the good spot on my back, but it was my butt. It kept hitting, the rope kept hitting my butt, and it felt so uncomfortable. And I'm like trying to figure out, like, how do I work with this? Like, eventually you get used to it. But for the very first time, it was uncomfortable. It hurt. I'm like, why are these ropes so hard? Like, what is it? But, like, I understood the reason why the ropes need to be, like, tight, because you don't want them to be loose. But it was a different experience, and I had to, like, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Like, you'll hear that a lot, and it's true, because I was very much uncomfortable. Like, on my first day, on that Tuesday, and then that Thursday, and then that next Tuesday, because we had promo class, and I was so shy. I didn't want to, like, do promos. Oh God, I was just a mess. Like, I was trying to fake like I had confidence, or try to come up with something that would make me confident, and it just was not working because I was so new and I wasn't used to everything yet. So it was incredibly hard. Like I said, like, I knew it was going to be hard, but I didn't think it would be like this hard.
Right.
And that's something not everybody knows, the whole package, what goes into training. It's not just the physicality of it. Like you said, you were, scared of the promo class, and finding yourself and finding that voice. And that's something that, is such an elemental part of character development. And we're lucky that we offer that here, and we can help people to do that. But that is a very real thing, to be, like, afraid of that and not know, well, who am I? Like, right now, I'm just, I'm me, and I'm just here to train. But now I have to be a character.
Yes, that was the biggest part of just wrestling in general. Like, you can do the moves. You can teach a monkey how to do anything, but, like, in order for you to, like, really figure out who you are within wrestling, or who you want to be inside that ring, that's when it starts. Right. Like, you're like, I don't know who I want to be. I'm just here. I'm just here to train, So I feel like that's really the hard part that you got to think about. Yeah. And you got to really, like, sit down and think about it.
It can be,
I think that part of it, though, comes in time. That's like the later. Yeah. Like, at first it's kind of like in phases. Just like Tara brought up a good point. That really, logistically speaking, that people should understand, if obviously they're fans of wrestling, if they watch this, the way that a wrestling ring logistically works, the heavier you are, the more that you make the wood and the steel flex, the easier it is on your body. So, like, Tara brought up a good point for like, women who are much lighter. Like, you're not moving, you're not budging that ring as much, so it's not getting its flex. So it's probably even more so for you, more like a deck.
Yeah.
Like, if you could imagine a deck and just throwing yourself backwards and landing on it.
I broke my ribs like 6 months into training, something like that, on a suplex. I'll never forget. Broke them 6 weeks later because I thought they were healed. But it was just like, the move didn't go wrong. It was just, there's only so many times my ribs wanted to hit the mat, and there was no, like Dan said, there's no give. Like, I'm landing where I'm supposed to land, but
it really is like
that
a
repetitive
small
motion.
Car crash.
Every
time. Every bump on your body, which is why the term a bump card used. I think my bump card is more than punched. Like, you do, because every bump that you take is like, it's like a small car wreck. On your body, the impact on your body, and even more so for, like, Tara and Gia, yourselves, women that are lighter. You're just not flexing it, so it's definitely probably a lot more impactful.
Oh, definitely is. Every single time I hit the mat, oh God, even still now, I still feel it. Like, that feeling will never go away, especially if you don't breathe out. Everybody, please breathe out. I remember, I think something. It was a shoulder tackle. So I remember this day in training, RJ was teaching it, and he's like, "We're gonna teach you guys how to do shoulder tackles," and I'm just like, "Okay, all right." And then, like, he demonstrated, and I'm like, damn, I'm gonna get messed. my bad. I'm like, I'm probably gonna get messed up by one of these guys in here because I'm the only girl, and I have nothing against training with guys. Like, I'm not gonna be like, oh, they're gonna be rough with me. Like, I don't care. Like, I have a brother at home that I roughhouse with, so go ahead. So I remember that I forgot who I took the tackle from. It might have been Khan. It might have been him at the time because it just kind of happened. I remember I took one from him. He bulldozed me. I wasn't ready for it. And I hit the mat. I'm like, oh my God. I really wasn't ready for it. And it just kind of like grew from there. Like I did have to wrestle the guys and whatnot. But just being able to like take the bumps, it left me sore every single night. I would take long hot showers.
Oh, the longest.
The longest. And
I know what you mean.
And then you got the Tiger Bomb, the icy hot.
Tiger Bomb.
Yep.
Is the best.
Yep.
So that was my life at the moment. And then you get used to it. But then like there's certain days where you're like, I need that icy hot. I need it right now.
Before, can I ask real quick? You said then you get used to it.
Yes.
Was there a time after you had given the $3,000, you had gotten up and running with getting into the routine of training, where you seriously considered quitting?
No.
Great question.
No. The reason why is because I understand why it is now, but back then when I was first starting out, a lot of the guys thought I would quit. And
They think all the girls are going to
They
quit.
think all the girls is going to quit. And
That's the reality.
I did not understand why, because I'm like, I just gave up $3,000. Why would I quit? Why?
Right.
What is the reason for me quitting? Like, this is what I want. And being that I am probably now 3 years in, I can understand why people do, or the girls do quit. It's like Dan said, it's the ring. It's like when they take their first bump, that's where you decide, like, if you want to still do this or not. And I've seen a couple of girls that where they took their first bump, they're like, I don't see them for like a week, and then I'm like, all right, they're gone. Or they could hit the mat, and we have like the headgear that we wear, like when you first start off. Somehow the girl got a concussion while wearing the headgear. I don't know how it happened, but it happened.
It's because of the snap of the neck.
Yeah.
You know?
She never came back.
Yep.
And I was just like, okay, I see why the guys quit.
Right.
I'm not the guys, the girls
Well,
quit.
the guys quit, believe me.
Yeah,
The guys do.
Yeah, the guys definitely
You know what,
quit.
though? I think it's more
25 years,
obvious.
I've seen 500 people sign up to the school, and I never want anyone to quit, but I don't know, maybe 75.
Yeah.
If that.
But like
probably
for every
a second.
100 guys that sign up, there might be 5 girls.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so when they quit, it's like a very obvious void. And so they don't stick around. I
Yeah.
mean, that's been true since, I've been here for 20 years and it's been true. You know what I mean?
I stuck around because I felt, me personally, I felt disrespected. Because they're like, oh, you're going to just end up quitting. I'm
Yep.
like, okay, all right, we'll see. We'll see if I quit. And I didn't. I still came. I still show up. There probably were days where, like, I'm super sore. I really don't feel like going into
Right.
practice, but I did not quit.
Right.
I still stuck around, and that's how I earned my keep. And then people kind of, like, remembered who I was, because, like, you're not going to remember someone who, like, comes in for a week or, like, just in and out versus someone who's there consistently. So I had to prove myself, like, I'm staying, like, I'm here. So, yeah.
And I remember when we do the birthday parties on the weekends, and I remember they would kind of push you out to the front with me and be like, go help Tara.
Yes.
And I remember when I would go back there and I would ask RJ, is Gia going to be on the birthday party today? Like, I would go back all the time and ask. No, she's out there with you. And I was like, oh, come
I didn't
on.
know anything about that.
I know. That's why I'm telling you
Okay.
now.
Why
And
is
so,
that?
fine.
Why is that?
Well, a lot of it was not having other females here.
Okay, that's
So,
understandable.
but I would always be able to put in, well, it's a girl's birthday party. I need to have a girl presence.
Did RJ
I
not
do
think
do
she
that.
was ready at the time?
No, it wasn't that. I think it was, I don't know, sometimes you would just kind of get into a groove. Like, we had, like, our set birthday party matches, that
totally
kind of thing.
understand
Yeah.
that.
And I did need help out on the front end with me. And so, I did appreciate that. But I was so excited when finally I got the word, Gia's on the show today. I was like, yay!
I remember, like, my first time being on the birthday party show, and it was for me getting prepared for wrestling for my first match. And how that went of where I was being told I was being on my, getting my first match, I thought people were punking me. because I'm like, I don't believe you. Why would I be having my first match? I'm probably just gonna make an appearance or something, like, you know, like do something like that. I'm not gonna have like my first match. And then like I talked with Dean and RJ, and I was like, please tell me straight, am I having my first match? And RJ was like, yeah, you are. And I'm like, okay. Like, I don't know what to do, what to say. I'm like, in my head, I'm like, you're not ready. And then I'm like, you are ready. And I'm like, no, you're not ready. So I had to like mentally prepare myself for that. And
So
then
you didn't think you were ready.
I didn't think I was ready.
So that's probably why.
My first match, I didn't think I was ready
But that's
either.
probably why,
Yeah.
just again, from a trainer and a guy that trained RJ, you know what I mean? I know one of the reasons I let RJ do so much was because he thought just like me. You know, and that's probably why.
Okay.
Not, you know, he's not here to ask, but I would say if I had to take a guess, he probably maybe he didn't see your confidence, and that's why he wouldn't pull the trigger on you.
Yeah.
Until he felt that you would, you know, your confidence was there.
But he always told me that like he would never put me in a situation where he thought that I wasn't prepared for it.
Right.
Like, he always
Exactly,
says
yeah.
that.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, and I think
Neither would I have.
Yeah. I think he knew that I was ready, but in the beginning, I was very much into like getting into my head. I still do, but it was more heavier in the beginning, and I was self-doubting myself. But he could see that like me training, I was doing fine. I was listening. I was doing what I needed to do, and he thought I was ready. It was just in my head like I was not ready.
Right, and sometimes you got to work through that. And
Yeah.
You need to build that confidence up a little bit, because in this, if you are, you know, as a trainer and kind of like opening up the gate to let you run out like a horse, like run out the gate.
Yeah.
You have to know you're ready, because if you don't, you could hurt somebody.
Yeah.
You could hurt yourself. You could.
Thankfully,
try,
I
you know,
didn't.
yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a degree of wanting to know, like, okay, she's ready to run
Right.
before you pull the gate. And
Yeah.
let her go.
Absolutely,
The
yeah.
birthday party
Yeah.
was like that step, because everybody starts off at the birthday party, and once like I guess you could say I got comfortable with that, then that's when we're like, all right, show, and I'm like, no.
That's what's great about
Yeah.
having them, you know, because then you've got that stuff you can kind of put in your back pocket that then when you're in a match,
Yeah.
you can pull that out, and it's like, oh, okay, this is just like the birthday parties, you
Yeah.
know, and it comes back to you.
To a degree, because I know the birthday parties is like filled with kids and everything, and it's not like a full
Well,
show
right.
like how MCW was. But like the difference between a birthday party and a show, like you have all these lights on you, and you have everybody looking at you, and that's how I felt when I first went out there. Like all these lights, these people are looking at you. You don't want to mess up. You wanna do good and whatnot. So the pressure was on.
Yeah.
And it's an amazing gauge.
Yeah.
Like, even though it's not the same, in some ways it is. The birthday parties are such an amazing
Yes, they are.
gauge for people to begin, for you to start, because it's for some people, and you get on the show and all the first time, it's the butterflies are just so much.
Right.
So it kind of lets you release some of them where it's not as big of a presentation, but it's still, the butterflies are still there, and you got your, you know. So.
Oh, I had the butterflies. I remember when my first match, I believe it was for a studio show, it was Breakthrough, and I remember it had to be in like 2000, maybe 18, or maybe it was, it was 2018, and I was supposed to wrestle Sahara 7, but she wasn't, there tonight, so instead I had to face Brittany Blake. And I remember standing in the ring. I'm nervous. I'm like, oh my God, I'm about to have my match like right now. And like, I'm just like, oh my God, like I hope I don't mess up. I hope I do good. I hope I make RJ proud. I hope I make Dean proud. Like, I just didn't want anything bad to go wrong, especially like in my first match, because I've heard horror stories about people with their first matches, and it was bad. So I think overall, I did good for it being my first time. And I remember when I went back, I just cried. I just bawled my eyes out, because I'm like, I just had my first match. Like, I did it. And then, like, I thought about, like, because I remember when I first signed up, I asked my mom, like, if I had my first match, like, would you ever be there? And she's like, yeah, but unfortunately she passed away. So it was, like, it was bittersweet.
Was your uncle?
Was your uncle? I was just going to ask that, yep.
I'm pretty sure he was. I want to say he was, because it was my first match and whatnot.
Were you
sure.
advertised, or did you know, or did we throw you on there?
So
That's a question too, because you may not have known.
Both.
Yeah.
It was both. So, like I was saying, I thought I was getting punked because they didn't.
Right.
Nobody told me anything, and then coming to find out, like 2 months, like kind of in advance, I knew. But then it was advertised. I'm like, oh, this is for real, Like, okay. And then I'm like, at the beginning, because I remember you guys do like, was it a food party, like a Jimmy Seafood. I think it was like a Christmas party. Yeah, Christmas party.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had time in advance to prepare myself. But then once the date started getting closer and closer, and it was day of, and I'm like, man, I gotta wrestle. This is it. I gotta wrestle. So it was very bittersweet for me to have that moment.
And you we kind of brought him up a couple times. So you got pretty close with RJ. Did you get a tattoo?
I did. I got it's like my little jacket and everything. So I got a tattoo for RJ and my mom. At the top it says Bruiser Strong with a sunflower because I love sunflowers, and at the bottom it says Mommy's Little Girl.
Gotcha.
So
you just got that.
I got that actually like a month ago.
Right. I remember seeing it on
I was
Facebook.
I don't know how you got a tattoo. I don't know how anybody gets a tattoo. I was like shaking in the chair, like I'm trying to concentrate on like not focusing on the pain. And I'd get another one because it was fun, but like, oh my God, like I was like, this is for RJ, this is for my mom, just bear through it, like.
Yeah, I have one on my forearm as well,
and then like the closer, like the star, that's where he started.
Yep.
Oh, it's shot right there, and I was like, oh man, let's get the star done and over with.
You and Sarah both got pretty tight with RJ.
Yeah.
You guys made it tough for me to talk to you about everything that was going on.
Yeah.
You know, especially when things started kind of trending in a bad direction.
She took it harder than me.
Yeah.
I was really so happy that he bonded with you all, and you know, in that role as trainer and student, because I know he trained the girls, you know, when I was actively wrestling, and I hated him as a trainer. I hated him. Oh my God, it was hard. Like it made me want to quit.
Oh,
But he, you know, people come full circle. They grow as a person, you know. I found Axel Rotten to be the best trainer for me.
Okay.
Like, I gelled with him. I don't know why. I mean, for as many flaws as he had, for whatever reason, I clicked with his style of training and did not click with RJ's. So I know that when he, like, connected with you all, I was watching from afar, kind of like, oh, this is where he's meant to be, like, as a trainer. Like, I was happy to see that kind of growth and, you know, the kinder, gentler RJ, who was, you know, 20 years ago, RJ would have said there's no difference between your body and his body.
Okay.
He would not have ever sold for that in a heartbeat. You know, it would have just been, suck it up, you're just not tough enough. So, no, I'm not kidding. You know, I mean, that's the reality.
I believe that.
He definitely became, but he was still tough, but he definitely became a more kinder, gentler bruiser. But a lot of that was talks with me and him.
Yep.
Because he was one of the last guys. The way I was trained was completely all the horror stories you hear about old school. I mean, I was beat up physically, kicked in the face. I mean, beat up to like UFC style beat up, and just punched in the face and kicked in the face. They were Axel and Ian. I became close friends with Ramblin' Rich, closer friends because me and him actually became friends because he had a couple years training. He had a couple years on me training, and he actually stepped in on a night. I had no idea, but Axel and Ian were going to slice my forehead open. You know, they were going to rip me with a razor
get you
blade.
some color.
They were going to just in training, and I had no idea. And Rich stepped in, and it was kind of like a big thing, and everybody was like, "Stop!" And I'm like, "Dude, whoa, what's going on?" You know what I mean? And they're in there punching. My eyes swelled shut. It's black and blue shut, and I'm just getting beat up. And they were going to like, and that's just kind of the stuff that happened. They were basically in the middle of beating me up, going to slice my forehead open, and just I would start bleeding profusely, and to see how I handled it. And like, that's the kind of mentality. So, like, I carried a lot, not that extreme, but the very old school beat you up into when I started training guys, RJ being the first guy. So I understand the connection to that. Like, hey, this is it. But I would always have these discussions with RJ and say, RJ, listen, the ring is going to weed the people out.
Yes, it does. It does.
The ring is going to weed the people out that don't have the heart to do it. We would always have these discussions, and I'd always understand because, you know, he got slapped around a lot because Axel was still training with us, and then but ultimately through discussions and time over the years, he definitely became more kinder, gentler bruiser. And
but he was a better trainer for it too. Not just that he had calmed
he was a way
down, but
better
he
trainer.
was
He became
much
a way
better.
better trainer than
Absolutely,
me. RJ,
absolutely.
Hey, you're not supposed to agree with that. Come on, Tara. No, he did. RJ became the best trainer I ever saw in wrestling. He was the best. He was way better than me. He became a more well-rounded performer, and he was the best trainer I ever had, or I ever saw. So he really became and kind of grew into really just an amazing trainer, evidenced by how well all of you were doing, and so many people that have come on. I just stood in the background like a proud grandpa.
Yeah.
Look at my kids.
Look at my grandkids, because you guys are my grandkids, because RJ was my kid, so I'd always be like, look at my grandkids, they're all doing so great.
And I needed him as like a trainer, like now that I'm like looking back at it, because with RJ, I've never really had like the what's the word I'm looking for? Like the tough love from a coach. Like I've been in sports before, but like I've never had like a personality like RJ before. Like he could be your butt kicker, but then he'll be the person like, all right, what's up? What's going on, man? Like talk to me. And I never got that. Right. So it was different. So like he in a way was my coach, but like a father figure to me as well, because I never had both. Right. So it was kind of like something I needed. It was a shock. So it was a big deal for me. Yeah,
it was for all of us. But I specifically, like, you guys made me like leave the room. You and Sarah was like, I can't do this.
I had to break the news to her because she didn't know. She didn't know anything.
Well, I remember when RJ first got sick and we got cancer. We were all here, and like Sarah, like I had to walk out of the room because she took it really hard.
Yeah, I was the one who had to tell her because she didn't know anything, and I didn't want to be the one to tell her because like she grew like a really like good bond with him, like all of us. But like it was hard on her, and I had to break it to her because I didn't want her to find out and just where she could have had time to process it.
It was brutal. Yeah. We definitely all had to process everything in our own way. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you mentioned those butterflies when you got that opportunity, and you fought Brittany Blake, but I'm curious as you were prepared for greater things. A big milestone for you here in MCW was when you stepped into the ring with Angelina Love.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about that.
Oh, the lovely lady. So I remember, I think at the time I was 3 shows in. Like I've had 3 matches so far. And or maybe it was 2.
Was it in Hollywood?
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah, it was
Hollywood. I remember you getting ready in the bathroom downstairs. I remember talking about this.
So I remember I was nervous. Like Angelina is so
Hollywood.
And she was so super nice, wasn't she? She was
sweet.
awesome.
Oh my
yeah,
God.
she was a delight.
So this is where things kind of took a different direction. This is probably like when RJ decided like you were supposed to be a heel for that match, and I didn't know. Nobody told me. So I'm thinking, like, since I'm the least experienced person, maybe Angelina should be the heel in this one. And they're like, no, she's their attraction. She should be the one that people should be getting behind. And I'm like, I didn't know. So I'm just, like, doing what was trained to do. But she took care of me. She was like, all right, what have you been doing in training? Like, what can you do? What do you know how to do and everything? And she took me underneath her wing, and like I was so happy. There was like a moment in the match where something happened, and I took a move, and she's like on the apron, or not the apron, she's on the turnbuckle, and then she pops down, and she just stares at me. And I don't know where it came from, but I just had like this like urge of like, I'm mad. Like, why am I mad? Like, she's just looking at me, and it was just something about that match where I loved and everything, and the Hollywood crowd.
Hollywood
oh my God,
crowd,
I love
yes.
Hollywood. Like the people there, the energy and whatnot. Like it will never top anything like it. Like it's just so much energy.
Yeah, they're a fun crowd.
They're a fun crowd.
I miss going down to Hollywood.
So do I. Like it's worth the drive. Yeah. It's really worth it and everything. So that match is where everything kind of took a turn and where I kind of had to be healed.
I can kind of tell just by training and all the years, like you're clapping your hands. I can tell you're nervous. I can tell you're nervous. You're nervous.
Yeah.
You can tell. You can see that in your jitters. That's okay though.
I was like maybe 2 or 3 matches in. So
and you're getting a match with somebody on television that you've seen on television. So.
Oh, I was so nervous when I was told you're gonna be wrestling Angelina. I'm like, oh my gosh, she's been wrestling as long as I've been born. Like, what am I gonna do?
Yeah, but Dan, you mentioned that's one of the things that you love to do. You love doing that, is taking someone like a Bruiser and RJ, putting him in the ring against Jerry the King Lawler.
Yeah. Well, it's just part of that ladder of building that confidence in yourself.
And Gia, I can relate to what you said about not knowing if you were going to be the heel or the baby face, because that actually happened to me with Sherry Martel. And I assume she's the name. She must be the baby face, right? So we're standing there at the curtain, like my music is playing. And she's like, so yeah, I'm going to work as a heel. And I went, what? But I'm a heel. And in my head, I was like, oh, no, we didn't talk about this. Wait, what does that mean? And I'm literally walking to the ring, and I swear there must be panic on my face at this point. And I'm walking to the ring going, heel versus heel. Okay. And I'm trying to think back to everything in my training, and I never saw that one coming. Like, I legitimately did not anticipate.
Did she get the crowd to turn on her?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure.
Yeah, and it was just, I just did not expect that, because I was with TQM for a couple of years at this point. Like, we were the huge heel faction in MCW, and I was like, wait, you can't be the heel. Like, you're Sherry Martel.
You can't, but then, I thought, I didn't realize it to the end, because I'm like, okay, I'm new, so I don't even know how to be a heel. So if someone's like, all right, maybe 3 months in, they're like, all right, Gia, you're gonna be heel. I'm like, I've been trying to wrestle, and you're like, be a heel? I don't have confidence to be mean. I don't have that yet. So
yeah, but it is kind of fun though.
You guys
I
are
love
monsters.
it. I love being a heel. I thought it was the best thing ever.
I feel like I didn't appreciate it as much as I do now. Because when I first started off, being heel, I was nervous. I was scared. But that's something you have to grow into and, kind of, work with it. And so, I find it funny because when I was heel, when people would see me in the ring, I'm mean, I'm nasty, versus when I come back past the curtain, I'm nice as can be.
Right.
A lot of people are like, man, you throw me off. And I'm like, how? Why? They're like, you're out there, you're mean, but you're here.
Right.
You're like, you're really sweet.
Right. I got that as well.
I think it's fun, when I look back on it, being heel was a lot of fun and whatnot, and remembering the fact that I had the blue hair, the blue lips, that was a total accident. That was me being blue everything. That was a total
I remember
accident.
I got you blue glitter eyeshadow.
Yeah. It was a total accident and whatnot. Only reason why I did it was because MCW was blue, and I was like, I want to stand out from everyone else. So what's the perfect way of standing out? So I'm in the hair store, and I'm like, I haven't seen anybody wear blue hair. Let me try that. Or have blue lips. Let me try that. So that's how the blueberry came into existence.
Well, actually, we're gonna take a break, and when we come back, I want to talk about how you got noticed by not just people here in MCW, but outside of MCW, and we want to hear more about that part of your journey as well.
Okay.
All right. So stay tuned. We'll be right back with Women's Champion Gia Scott.
We hope you're enjoying this week's episode of the MCW Cast. At MCW Pro Wrestling, much like many small businesses throughout the country, the pandemic has presented many challenges. For a company like ours that hosts events with live audiences, the impact has been even more severe, and all of our forms of revenue have been cut off. In order to continue to engage with our fans on a regular basis, we made the decision to begin to produce the MCW Cast, and are providing it for absolutely no cost on Facebook Live, Twitch, YouTube, and SoundCloud. If you'd like to support us during these challenging times, you can do so in several ways. The most popular way is to buy us a coffee to help fuel the cast. Just go to buymeacoffee.com/MCWcast, and for just $3, you can buy the cast a coffee, or you can choose to become a member of the cast for just $5 a month and receive several special perks. That's buymeacoffee.com/MCWcast. You can also contribute directly on Cash App, MCW Wrestling, or on Venmo, MCW-Wrestling. You can also show your support for the MCW Cast while sporting some great gear by going to teespring.com/stores/MCWcast to pick up a full line of official MCW Cast merchandise, from coffee mugs and face coverings to t-shirts and sweatshirts. Also, don't forget to comment in the threads on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch to get your questions answered on a future episode And you can also send us a tweet using the hashtag AskMCWCast. Thank you for your support, and now, back to the show.
All right, and after that break, we're back. Now, when the cameras weren't rolling here, Dan, you and Gia were kind of in a conversation about, getting booked and kind of being used by a promoter and then being cooled off by a promoter, and how sometimes that can kind of get funky, or people's egos can be
feelings
bruised.
or feelings get hurt. I guess we were saying like sometimes there's this whole moving parts as a promoter from where I stand, and over the years, and me and Larry and me and Tara have had these conversations. I've had local talents get upset with me because all of a sudden maybe I'm using them every show for a year, a couple years, and I have to interchange some parts because from where I'm looking at it, especially say Joppa, the MCW arena here, or we even kind of built our own little territory in Hollywood where we're there a couple times a year. And when you're trying to get wrestling fans to continue to come back, and every show, you need to try to always keep it fresh, whether it's the stars that you have in or new talent. And at times I may have guys and girls that, I say, hey, I need to cool you off or take you off a couple shows for 6 months or so to try to get some other, fresh talent in. You were saying, I guess, with you and Sarah?
So with me and her, I completely understand with, I know one of them was the MCW anniversary. I'm pretty sure it had to have been 2019, where it was Robbie and Bobby, Arya Palmer versus the Cartel. I'm pretty sure that was the match.
Like the intergender 6 person, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I remember the reason why I was not on that show, but I still made an appearance, but I wasn't on the show. And I understand because we have been fighting a lot. And I get that because eventually people get tired of seeing the same thing over and over and over again. So I get that. I never went up to RJ and Dean and were like, why am I not on the show? I deserve to be on the show. Blah, 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 blah. I didn't care. I was like, oh, I have a night off. Great.
I saw you and Arya as like the so Tara versus Candy was 20 years ago. We were in the exact same scenario where we were really the only girls that were here at the time, and we just had the same feud in different towns over and over again. So I completely understand. What
and
you're saying.
another thing is structuring it from a promoter standpoint, and this is where like talent doesn't understand. Is the time constraints. The time, and I know this would always be something I'd always like bust chops on Dean and RJ. To me, the perfect time is like 2.5 hours, bell to bell, and that's like with an intermission, because it's like a movie. You think of a movie, unless it's some big blockbuster like the Avengers, and you're sitting in there for 3 hours, right? And even then, you might start to get tired. And that always seems like the sweet spot, like 2.5 hours to get people in, because you also got to figure if it's a show and you're doing an autograph signing and the people get there an hour and a half early, and so now it's 4 hours that they're in the building. Signing, getting autographs, talking to people, sitting down, watching the show. So you can only have so many matches. Because then you get into, okay, well, you stack 11 matches. Well, now you got matches going out there for 3 minutes, and you want people to have the time to get what they need, across, and you also got to save the time for the main events and the ones that the stories are built around, the important ones. So I'd find that like butting of heads with talent and say, hey, like, you're on the show, you're a part of the show, we're furthering something that you're doing, but we already had 8 matches, and we couldn't put that 9th match in because now you start chipping away and you start pushing the envelope of where you're getting the time thing. And I know it's easy for talent to get, their feelings hurt, or and I'd get that and this is where, as a promoter, I'd always butt heads, and with talent, they try to get them to understand that, because the whole show is one match. It's a whole bunch of matches that piece together, and the best analogy I ever heard was the whole show is beef stew. But
RJ says it all the time.
I know. That's because my analogy that I don't break it down.
He didn't like beef stew.
Yeah, but it is. But beef stew is carrots and onions, and right, and it's not just.
Can't be the onions.
Sometimes you can't be the onions. Sometimes you can't be the beef. But they all make beef stew. So it's important that all the matches, and that's timing wise too. You start you got a match and a main event you're building up, and then you've stacked 11 matches or 10 matches on the show. Now you're 3 hours and 20 minutes into a show, and we're sitting there watching before the main event, and 15% of the building is walking out the door before the match starts. Then those people feel like they got ripped off because they couldn't watch the whole show because they had kids in the audience that were falling asleep.
Yes.
So there's all these moving parts that you have to that come together in a show, and and that's where. I know it's hard to understand, but it's like getting on the same page.
I completely understand everything that you're saying because both RJ and Dean broke it down for me before. I never question their method or anything like that. I was always understanding about okay, you can't be on this show because you and Arya have been working too much. Cool, great, night off for me. Or we just didn't have a spot for you. Okay, great, another night off for me.
Right.
Or
we just didn't want to add a match.
Except it wasn't necessarily a night off, because one thing that I wanted to bring up about the expansion into social media is that I would always, for those of you who don't know, I'd be doing the backstage interviews and setting those up. And I'd be asking RJ and Dean, hey, what do we have booked for 3 months out? Where's this character going? So we'd be doing, promos or something like that for the next 2 shows. So it was never, you didn't necessarily have a night off. We always were still trying to push talent and further the storylines and stuff. And not everybody got that cutting a promo for your match that you're doing 6 weeks from now is just as important sometimes because we'd lay that foundation, or we'd ask your opinion about a match between Anya and Arya, for example, knowing that 2 shows from now you were going to be in a triple threat, or it was going to be you versus Arya or you versus Anya. And so that's such a crucial part of it. And we really, I feel like 20 years ago we wouldn't have had that same hook because we didn't have the social media outlets to do that. And now we have that, and we can really use it to our advantage to do that.
And trial by fire, you learn. That's all the stuff as a promoter I'd learn over the years, and having shows go and not wanting to say no to everybody. And I used to not want to hurt people's feelings. And it's hard. And I would, but it's not. But you get it. It's not a feelings thing. And I'd have it, and I'd say, all right. And then believe me, we had plenty of MCW shows with 12 matches. You know what I mean? They went 3.5 hours long, and you know what I mean. So.
All I want to say is just that I completely understand, because there have been times where I've came to a couple of Shamrocks before, and I forgot which one it was, but it was super long for me.
Well, that's all. You know what? That's always the worst, and it got to be, and that's always the one where every year, and I'd be emotionally exhausted from having people because it's our WrestleMania.
Yes, it is.
So everybody wanted to be on it, but then it's try to guys, we got to have 5 qualifier matches, and we got to have the Shamrock Cup, and the Shamrock Cup probably needs at least 30 minutes.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Minimum just for that match. So how many there's only so many matches I can add to the show, or guess what? 50% of the building's going to be leaving at 11 o'clock before the Shamrock Cup's even going on. Then those people are going to feel like they got ripped off.
Watching, tag matches.
Yeah, so we're just throwing, So.
Which is why I know I like it. Some people don't. Tara, I like the fact that it got split up into 2 nights. I think that was beautiful because, it was you could continue off of what you just. It's like getting a dinner and you could wrap it up a little bit, save it for the next day, and then eat it.
So we were talking. We were talking about this before you got here.
Yeah.
And from a performer standpoint, 2 nights was actually pretty cool. From the Office standpoint, as my role shifted in the company, I was like, oh my God, these two-day shows. I get it. We all experienced the 4-hour Shamrock Cups before, and we didn't like that either. So then splitting it up was good, but from the Office point of view, it was like running 2 shows back to back.
And I will never want to have that because, of course, stress. And I've seen Dean run around with his head chopped off a couple of times. And are just kind of chilling, sitting in the back, kind of watching TV a little bit. Sometimes, not all the time, but he was still there. But it was just from a performer's and a fan perspective, it was beautiful. I don't know what you guys went through. I don't want to be there. I don't want to experience that.
When I have 5 pages of promos to cut in over the course of 2 nights, it's not good.
Yeah, it's definitely a different dynamic on this side of the curtain.
It really is.
I remember after the first time we did 2 nights in a row, Dan, by the end of the first night, you were like, never again. Never
Wait,
again.
That's the green room.
The green room, yeah.
You dumped all your energy into it. You did that on night one, and then you're like, oh my gosh, I gotta come back tomorrow and do this because we're here.
Like, what am I doing?
right?
It's mentally and physically like draining. It definitely is, and it's. Wrestling shows are that roller coaster.
Yes.
You're up, you're down, you're up, you're down. And your job is to help the audience to go on that journey with you, right? So they're going up and they're going down. So, they're exhausted. If you're watching, say, WrestleMania, 7 hours, okay? Start to finish. And I've been to a couple of them live, and, they are a
stealing
draining...
their gimmick, aren't they?
Yeah, they're a
Aren't they doing 2 nights?
They are, yeah. They're a
Stealing their
draining
gimmick.
encounter, right? So
They got that from the green room.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jerry McDevitt is your cousin. He probably tipped Vince off. Like,
Hey, you're doing this.
Yeah.
I should probably do this too.
They did this at the Dundalk.
But there is something to be said for spreading it out over 2 days because then you give your audience time to digest the information that you just gave them. Instead of hitting them with 12 matches, you're spreading it out over the course of 2 nights. You get them excited to come back. I mean, it doesn't matter that we're exhausted. That's fine. But you're right. From a fan's perspective, I can see that was probably far more enjoyable than one great big long
And then
one.
there's the financial aspect of it for the fans.
Right.
And you got to go like, hey, can they
afford.
We know some people, hey, this is tough to do.
Right.
And also,
kids want a shirt.
Right.
Kids want to eat.
Right.
Got to go over the new
I
bridge,
think that's something we handled well by giving package discounts and 2-day ticket
And I
prices
also
and things.
thought it was good that because even though sometimes certain fans can't make it on certain days, so I think this ran on Friday or Saturday or Sunday. It was one of those days. Mm-hmm. So say for instance you can't make it on a Friday. Okay, well I can make it on a Saturday. Boom. You know, you got people that can kind of choose or people that can make it both days. Yeah. So I thought you guys running it for 2 days was pretty awesome from a performer's perspective.
I'll tell you one thing that I thought was pretty awesome. We've gone over a lot of the things with your career to date here at MCW Pro, but I heard that eventually you branched out and actually got an opportunity to start training at the ROH Dojo.
Yes, I did, and it was frightening. It was very frightening. At the time, there it is. At the time, I will never forget my first day going there. This was before, after doing the tryout, but when I did the tryout, there was me and 2 other people. It was Bobby and Aria Palmer that went and tried out as well. And I was nervous. I had the butterflies again. And so I'm just like, all right, you got to do good. At the time, I'm pretty sure there was a couple of other people that went there as well. I know Hunter was there. He was probably there. Yeah. And I was just like, all right, you got to impress everybody. You got to do something that you don't normally do. And I did. I ended up having a match, and I normally don't do back body drops because of the way how I land, like we were talking about earlier.
Right.
I
hate them.
Those are
I hate them for that reason.
Special occasions, and I did that one, and the pain was worth it. And so because I wanted to kind of updo myself and whatnot, and it was good. But I wanted to do even more the second night because it ran for 2 days, and I was exhausted. That was the only time for 2 days I was exhausted. But it was worth it because everyone did so good and whatnot, and I really wanted to show myself and prove that I belong here in the dojo and I belong in ROH. So I had to quickly prove myself. And so after that, I got invited back to do the training, and. Joey Mercury was the one who was leading training, and I remember this very fondly. Went to training, was very excited to be there, and I was nervous, of course, because I've never been around Joey Mercury before, and so I think something happened where I got in the ring and I was nervous and I just couldn't I couldn't control it. And then he was like, "Are you nervous?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he was like, "All right, get out the ring." And I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "Get out the ring." And I'm like, he's not serious. And then he goes, he's like, "Get out the ring." And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, oh my God, I blew it. This is it. I blew it. So I get out the ring, and he was like, "Since you're so nervous and whatnot, how about you go back down to MCW and train with Dean and RJ because I don't need you here." I'm like, oh my God. I was like, what in the world is going on? So I go to pack my stuff because he said go back to Dean and RJ and whatnot, and then I'm literally getting my stuff and packing up, and then someone from the class was like, "Hey guys, stop what you're doing, Joey wants to see you." And I'm like, oh my God, what does he want now? And so I came out, and he was like, I'm just kidding, right? And I'm like, what?
But you didn't know that, right?
I didn't know that.
If you don't know
he
Joey
kind of
Mac-
wasn't
Joey
kidding.
Mercury,
He was kind of testing you, is what he was trying to do. Like,
Yeah.
he's like, I want to see how she's going to react to this type of pressure.
Yeah.
Because the further up you go, the pressure becomes even more intense.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's prep.
That's his demeanor, though. You don't know. Like you had mentioned a few weeks back about like Bubba not knowing
Yeah.
if he liked you
Oh,
or
yeah,
not.
yeah.
Joey is exactly the same way.
don't
don't know
He
if
has
he
like
likes
this
you
straight
or not.
poker face. You can never tell. I
that's
can't.
'cause
I've known him for 20
That's
years.
because it was
I don't know.
reconstructed.
I can't tell. So like I took him seriously. He was like, "You guys know I was just kidding, right?" And I'm like thinking in my head, like, how was I supposed to know? I don't know anything. Like, this
Did
is
that
a new
help
experience.
get butterflies out?
Yes and no. I was still like it's like
Kind of
when-
shook you up because sometimes stuff
Yeah.
like that can make you go okay, and then you get back in there and you're
Yeah,
loosened
Yeah,
up.
it's
like
like
I
that
was
kind of
okay.
It almost
Yeah.
like
You
a
know?
pressure valve.
Yeah.
Like
it
a
eased
pressure
the
valve.
pressure up and whatnot,
Yeah.
but like I still have like this high respect for him. So like my guard was always still up. Like even with RJ, like I still know him and he's my trainer and whatnot, but my guard was always still up with him, and not in a bad way, but like I held him on like a high pedestal.
No,
because
Gia,
I respected him.
I want to ask you something. Going over that journey that Joey kind of took you on for fun, looking back on that, do you see any elements of abuse? Being someone that's new into this environment and wanting to do really well, having a trainer that was certified on television at Mania, former WWE champion, then kind of making an example of you and kind of taking you to a very low point where you think, wow, I'm not good enough. Let me go pack my bags and go. I could see myself almost tearing up if I had my peers looking at me and I'd just been dismissed. And then to be told, oh, well, I was just joking. Like, I was just joking, so come on back,
I don't think to me, I don't think that was abuse. It was more like kind of like I guess that was his way of kind of like loosen up a little bit, or like you don't have to be nervous or scared or anything like that. I think that was his way, because like I've seen it before. Like some guys do it where like, all right, what's the worst thing that can like something can happen to you if someone says like no? If someone says no, then like okay, they said no. Like that's it. So I kind of like took that into perspective, where like, all right, he yelled at us. Like, what's the worst that can happen? Nothing. So what am I so nervous for now? So that's what I like took from it.
I guess I just kind of posed that question because there are certain things in the wrestling industry that any other walk of life, if you were put in
I
that
agree with you.
in that in that position where, okay, I'm brand new, I want to make a good impression, and then kind of the superior kind of like uses you to make an example, and then kind of reel you back in and be like, yeah, welcome to the business, kid, and you're like,
No,
oh,
I've
okay.
had that happen before.
Yeah.
It's two different experience. The experience I had with Joy versus the experience I had before, it's totally different. Like for him to be like, oh, I was just joking, I was just like hitting like kind of like ease the pressure value.
The pressure, yeah.
Yeah.
That's all it was, versus like someone kind of like belittling you. That's a little different versus them like saying like, oh, I was just joking, I'm not belittling you. Like you can tell when someone's
Right.
kinda,
And
like,
I think
pushing
all of
down.
these, this is where, I mean, we could probably get into a real debate here, like culturally, how the world is. Because I agree with you, like, you can't put pro wrestling in the same as you could if this was an accounting firm or some
Right.
like state office job where someone talking to you wouldn't be appropriate like that. But I would 150% defend him for talking to you like that
Yeah.
in context of what we're in, because this is a job where like what he's preparing you for, or you have to be mentally prepared for, like you said, Larry, with a company like Ring of Honor and taking that step up where all of a sudden you're performing in front of a live TV audience, you know what I mean? Like the pressure to be a live performer and in front of people, hundreds and thousands of people, like that's the kind of thing you need to get those kinks worked out emotionally.
Yes.
So that you can perform under absolute immense pressure. It kind of, that is helping to me. You telling me that story is he was also kind of helping like a pressure relief valve.
Sure.
Yes.
So him putting pressure and you being like, okay, to keep your composure, because all it takes in a wrestling ring, you could put a guy in a wheelchair or a girl in a wheelchair. If you're rattled and you can't compose yourself under a massive pressure, you could you could hurt some. You get in the wrestling ring, a girl, a guy, your life is in their hands. Their life, you know what I mean? You're exchanging your lives with each other. And you know what I mean? To me, you telling me that story is thinking he was checking your pressure. He was putting pressure on you to see how you could handle it if you break down, and then you're in the ring. You know, things go wrong in a wrestling ring.
Things go wrong in a wrestling ring.
So it's just not like anything else.
Right.
So I think people, if anyone was going to be offended or have their feelings hurt, or, oh, I can't believe he talked to you, you can't understand. You have to understand the context of this business versus, you know, like I said, working in a accounting firm
or a restaurant or something like that.
Something like that. There's not the same thing.
I had people here when I was working with Joey when he was here, and I had people in our locker room say, "Doesn't he scare you? Doesn't he make you nervous?"
Yes.
And I was like,
yes, all the time.
I mean, I've known him since he was like 18, so not really. But what he does do is drives me to not make a mistake and to be the best that I can be. And like, I think, like I said, I've known him for a significant amount of time, so I didn't have that like, oh my gosh, you know, he's up here, like you have to, you know, you've heard, you know, stories about his technique or whatever, and so I just felt that he genuinely tries to bring the best out of people, but you know, there's a high standard, of course, and you want to make sure that you don't disappoint. But like you said, in another situation that wouldn't necessarily be. But like here, I never felt that it was anything, you know, that I couldn't handle, and you know, like I said, it made me want to excel and do a good job. Of course. You know, so.
Yeah, I mean, I bring it up because a lot of the times hindsight is 20/20, and people will say, looking back on that point in my career, I definitely see elements of, you know, kind of flexing the position of power.
Oh no, I can tell. I can tell the difference if someone's being genuine versus someone who's being a butt in a nice way. I can tell when someone's being a butt, but you'll end up seeing the difference between the two, and it's important that you. And people see that, because people will think like, oh, it's just tough love, and sometimes it can be a really big butt.
Yeah, they can disguise it as like, oh, this is tough love, but really what they're doing is taking it out on you because you're a woman or you're black or whatever other hang-ups they have that they want to just be mean to you. Let's continue on with your ROH journey.
I want to talk about that Future of Honor tag match.
That's exactly where I was going.
Yeah, I knew it.
Yeah, so
I knew it.
Let's talk about that one. It was you and I believe it was Amy Rose, the Rumble Bunny.
Yes, and it was versus Trish Adora and Aria Palmer. I look back at that match and I think it was awesome and everything. It was just, we had so much involvement into that match. Like everything just came together. Like you take this piece of the pie and you take this piece of pie and like put everything together and to create this beautiful match where to me it felt like it was intense. Like I always wanted to raise the bar for not just in ROH but also at MCW as well, because I want to go out there every single night and people like, if they hear my interest, they're like, oh, Gia's coming out, like let me stay here a little bit longer, versus like if any other person came out is like, oh, let me go take a bathroom break. I never liked that for women. Like I want people to be engaged with it just like how they are with the men. So whenever I go out there, I'm like, I gotta try to updo anybody else that's coming after me or who went before me. Like I have to put myself at that level, because I don't want someone being like, oh man, the women's match, it was kind of like a snooze fest or whatever like that. So I always have to put myself on that pedestal to do better with every single match that I've been in, and I feel like I've done that since from like the beginning until now.
Well, and one of the people in that match with you, Trish Adora, just recently had the Iron Person match, or what they changed it to Iron Match, right?
Yeah,
not Iron Person,
Iron
but
match,
I think I would say that she probably shares that same, work ethic.
Everyone should honestly share like that kind of like mentality where they want to updo themselves from the last match that they have, because I commend the fact that people who paved the way for women's wrestling and whatnot. But as me growing up, I always wondered, like, why were the men so much bigger than the women? Why couldn't they be the same, or why couldn't they,
featured, right?
Yeah.
Like they were. It was more like a sideshow.
Yeah, like we were more like the eye candy, and I get it, but then again, I'm like, I kind of want to see some like a woman like be taken seriously and kick butt. Like there's like a level of respect for her that there would be for like the guys.
Right.
And so I wanted that, and I craved that, and I wanted to prove that like I'm a serious threat around here.
Right.
Like far as it could be a woman or it could be a guy, like
Right,
I
right.
belong to be just as much up there with the guys as anybody else.
Well, and that's a big hurdle to overcome because, you know, you're coming after, you know, the era of like the bra and panties matches
Yes.
and things like, and pudding matches and, you know, things like that. So, you know, you kind of, you go from a point where like in the, you know, in the 50s and 60s, women's wrestling was, you know, taken serious, you know, and then you have this period where it was not taken serious, and you know, and I was from that era as well. So you know,
And
I mean, and
I
that
was
just
as a
came with it.
promoter,
You
too.
were you booked that stuff.
I know. I
like,
booked you in a lot of bra and
I
panties
know that.
matches.
Yeah.
So,
Huh?
Yeah, with Dawn.
Yeah.
Dawn and you would be rolling around
Yeah.
and
but that was the
And that was just the
what
time,
was
and it's not,
expected.
you know.
Yes.
And you know what? Like
We better stop talking, or we'll be canceled.
I'm
yeah.
I'm a big feminist. Like those of you
Yeah.
who know me, like I'm all women's rights and stuff. But I also understood. You know,
understood.
I understood the logic behind it, and you know what? At the end of the day, it was a payday, and it was like,
Right.
well, I can work
Well,
a
and it
whole
really
lot and
was-
do this, or I cannot work.
But it's kind of too, like WWE, because they're obviously the top dog, sets the standard
tone,
of
yeah.
what
Yeah,
fans
yes,
want to
for
expect.
sure.
And I'm not making excuses, but I think maybe that's what kind of like really attracted you, like the era you're talking about, like Lita, because Lita's very much a feminist too. Very much, you know, women's rights and everything are incredibly important to her. It's what I love about her. She stands up. She really stands up for her beliefs, and that was important to her too. Like that era with her and Trish, they began to make. I think if you probably look at it, that's probably when that transition was really happening
100%. Yep.
of when they started to bring that respect
Yes,
I
to
agree.
women's wrestling and get it taken serious and take it away from. I mean, there was bra and panties matches on every week on Raw, so like it
Or some
became
pillow fight.
that's what and we did
Lingerie
that
battle
stupidity, you know?
royals,
Yep.
you name it.
And
I
we
mean,
did
it was
I'm
a
not,
cringe
you know,
time.
we used to have them at Michael's 8th Avenue, and we
Yeah.
did, but it's what, like the foundation was laid for what wrestling fans wanted
Right.
to see based off what they saw on Raw.
Right, like they wanted to see in person what they were seeing on TV Monday nights, and
You
that's
know,
the reality of it.
as the
Yeah.
performer that I
Yes.
booked you in, that
Yep.
I never booked you and Candy and Dawn
Yeah.
in those matches to exploit you
Right.
or make you feel less of yourself. You
Yeah.
know, and I know you would have always stood up if you felt that way.
Yep.
It was just what women's wrestling was at the time, and
Yep.
we were following that recipe.
But Dan, it wasn't only that, and this is why I respected you as a promoter, because as much as you had Tara and Dawn rolling around, you also had Alexis Lurie and Flipper, one of the
Right.
last graduates of females out of the Bone
Sure.
Breakers
Right,
Academy,
Angela, yeah.
doing like, so you would balance it.
Right.
Sure, you'd have TQM, Total Quality Management,
Do the
and you know, kind of
the
like
bra
a
and
cat
panties
fight,
match,
Yeah.
that
and
ECW
evening gown
style.
match, or as they were
Right,
called.
but then on the
yes.
right, yeah, but then
The,
on
the
the
more
sec-
politically as politically correct a way as you could put it then.
Right.
An evening gown match. You
Yeah.
just got stripped down to your underwear.
And it was great being caught in between both worlds. Like,
Right.
so I was there, you know, during that period, and then also the period you mentioned with Flipper and Mickey, and you know, we were working we were able to get these people who maybe tuned in at first to see, oh, is she going to lose her top? But now they're staying to watch the actual wrestling.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
we were booked on these girl shows. We were before intermission. We were brought in to be the wrestlers, you know, and then
Right.
they would clear it out, and then they'd bring in the other girls, you know,
Right,
and so I
right.
did hundreds of shows with Mickey, and that. I mean, it was a great time period. It's so different than anything
It
you're
is.
experiencing
because, like,
now.
Watching back and looking at, like, because I have, like, no choice because of homework and whatnot, you know, to study. And going back to, like, what it was before, I'm like, man, things have changed. And,
Right.
like, it really has changed and whatnot versus, like, I think it was a WrestleMania where they did, like, a Playboy,
Oh
like,
yeah.
pillow fight.
Yeah,
Yes.
without a doubt.
I've been in
With-
pillow fights. I did we somewhere in Pennsylvania. Kim and Candy and I did a pillow match. It was just a
changed.
different time, but you know, here we are, and you know, women's wrestling is being elevated and being taken more seriously.
I want to continue that. Even in the dojo or Future of Honor, ROH, like, it doesn't matter. I want to continue on doing that. I want to continue to elevate myself proving that I belong in here and like the women's matches or the women's division in general.
And we can
should
draw
be-
money just like the men can.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the women's, Royal Rumble. I
Yes.
mean, 20 years ago, that would never have happened.
No.
Ever. You wouldn't have been able to find 30 women
Not
to put
unless,
in a
not
Royal
unless
Rumble.
all the women were in
Were in their
bikinis and it was,
Yeah.
and
Or
it was pudding in
lingerie.
the middle of the ring.
Right,
Yeah.
Or
right.
Right,
lingerie.
like
Yep.
really, that's
Yeah.
what it would have been. That's how they would have been. That's
A
how
gravy
probably
bowl match.
a gravy
Yes.
bowl. Exactly. That's how it would have been.
Exactly.
Like this is how it has to be presented.
Yeah.
All of them in bikinis.
Yep.
You know what I
Right.
mean? And,
Yeah.
and gravy. And,
Yeah.
And now we're at a
Exactly.
point where you're talking about elevating.
which is a great idea.
a gr-
No.
I'm just
No.
kidding.
Well,
I'm
well,
just
well,
kidding.
no. You're right, because it was tied into Thanksgiving.
Right.
So
Right.
at the time when everyone's going down and getting their food,
Oh
you're
my God.
marketing a gravy
Gia's
bowl
like,
match.
don't even think about it, Danny. No chance.
Having wrestled in food on multiple occasions, I can tell you that is not something I would
I
ever
don't want
wish
to
on
have
anybody.
my whole entire gear ruined in food.
No, it was the
It
time,
does.
and it's
yeah,
all
I
changed
had like
for
my
the better.
food
And
gear that I would wear. Like for
I
things
definitely
like that.
think Amy and Trish, Lita, are probably some of the pioneers that changed it and
Yep.
brought it back to where it is today. Like got it away from that era.
Well, I mean, really, Trish started out in that era. She
did.
started
Yeah, she was
out
a
did.
fitness model.
yeah, she was-
Absolutely.
well, she was, and
Well-
her group was called TNA.
Right, TNA.
Yeah.
Sure.
You know, she really didn't do anything but walk down to the ring, and then finally, she got.
But they
involved,
definitely changed the perception
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
through
They-
the hard work and standing up and saying no. This is the direction we want to go.
And when I started, I wanted to be a wrestler. Like, I didn't want to sell for any of that stuff. Like, I didn't want to be in my underwear in front of people. Like, I wanted to be taken seriously, but I also recognized at that point in time, that's not where women's wrestling was. It was either, do this and get booked, or don't do this and don't get booked. So, and I don't mean that in like a, a power play kind of way. I just mean that was the reality of the time because it reflected what was on TV. So to come full circle and to, have women's wrestling being taken seriously is like everything I had hoped to, see. And I'm happy to see you experiencing that and the other women that we have here and, other ones that we've talked about, like Trish and so forth.
And
Yeah,
real
and
quick,
that's-
just to defend myself as a promoter too.
Okay.
It's
No, I didn't mean it negative.
No, I
No.
I know, but it's no different than at that era, in that late '90s era of like everything ECW was doing. When we would do like Fort Meade, and I'd say, "Hey, we got to do like the
The
thumbtack,
fire.
Oh, yeah.
or we got to do barbed wire," and I would say, "I'll do it. I'll get thrown in, but we got to do it because this is." ECW's hot and
Yep.
there's violence, or we got to do the chair shots. We got to have chair shots and unprotected chair shots. I'll take the chair shot. But it was like that violence. It was no difference than that. Like,
Yeah.
this is what's becoming hot. This is what the people want to see, so we got to give it to them.
Right,
So
right.
in a sense, yes, it was exploiting women at the time. That's what it was. But it was also what people wanted, what people were being groomed. That this
Yeah,
is
and
so we did it with the violence too.
It laid the foundation for getting people to sit and watch
Yes.
an hour-long match with a female in it, or to watch a female's Royal Rumble. Like those things wouldn't have been able to have happened 15, 20 years ago, and it's all those things that have led up to it that's made that possible.
And speaking of like talking about independent promoters, it's about that time.
Oh,
Your
is it
favorite
time for one of my favorite parts of the cast?
Yeah,
All right. Well, with that
you got to
said,
get filled in by Phil.
we got to be filled in
That's
the
right.
indie roundup. So let's take it to Phil Stamper, general manager of MCW Pro, and hear him fill us all in.
All right, we'll be back with some coffee club questions.
That's right.
for
We've got
Gia.
some questions for
All
Gia.
right.
Yay.
Hey everybody, this is Philip with another Independent Wrestling Roundup, and I have to address the elephant in the room. This last week, not a great week for some people in the world of independent wrestling. All the stories are going to connect. I just ask you to bear with me. The first incident occurred last week when there was an event that was announced as a charity event, and on the flyer for the event, there was an individual who has been accused of sexual impropriety, using their leverage as a person of prominence in wrestling as well as a promoter, allegedly, to garner favor and to ask folks to enter into a relationship with them. And if they did, there were opportunities. And if they didn't, they might be denied opportunities. Again, all accusations. And since that came out, that charity event no longer occurring. Connected to that, a different company may have been financially involved, and there were some questions about it. So now that company has lost an event that was going to be happening next week. And I'm not addressing the accusation. I want to be very clear about this. But this is going to connect back to another point in just a moment. Separate from all of that, a promoter for a different company was found to be on a sex offender registry list. He had not really disclosed his real name. Somebody found out somehow, and that information came to light. And on his accord, the information about the activities he did to be on the sex offenders registry list, which involved reprehensible acts with children, was found out. And so the question that came up, that has come up before, should there be background checks, criminal background checks in independent wrestling? There are some challenges with that. Right away, there's a financial cost to engage with these third-party companies that can do these checks. These checks are very extensive. They look at a broad base of criminal cases. They look at national databases. So there's some digging that these reputable companies have to do to find that information as well. And those are only, and this is where it connects back to that first story, those would only be cases that somebody has received a conviction, not just accusations. There are some companies that do those kinds of deeper dives, and those are super, super expensive. So already there's that financial challenge of making it happen, and that it may actually take an effort from a number of companies to come together, an agency to provide it at a cost-effective number, or a recommendation with also some of that agency support from the state athletic commissions that supervise wrestling in a number of the states across the country. So already on that side, there's some challenges. Then you do have what's called Title VII. It's a federal act that would actually prevent the ability to do an employment check before somebody is hired. Now, here, it's a little bit of a trick of language. Basically, you hire someone, and then you can run a background investigation into them. And if they have an action that they did when they committed a criminal act that they've been convicted of, that then would come in conflict with the work that they do, then they could be removed from that opportunity. And some of those nuances vary by state. So what Maryland does is not the same as what Virginia does. So even across the board, there is already some struggles and challenges because it's very specific by location. So it does garner that question. Should there be background checks? I'd like to know what some of you think. But let's look to the future. Let's look to hopefully bigger and brighter days ahead. Lots of action that is taking place this coming week. First on IWTV.live or IndependentWrestling.tv. You can also watch on their app, IWTV. Brand new episode of Heavy Metal Wrestling out today. On Wednesday, brand new episode of Limitless Wrestling's The Road. On Thursday, brand new episodes from C4 Wrestling Mixtape, as well as Beyond Wrestling's Signature Series and an event from Unsanctioned Pro. And then on Saturday, Sean Henderson Presents, and on Sunday, Create a Pro out of New York. Then Fight TV, already out with brand new episodes from Ring of Honor and SWA Championship Wrestling. On Friday, Pro Wrestling Australia. On Saturday, Independent Wrestling Expo 3 out of Texas. And on Sunday, action from Pro Wrestling Noah. Other live events taking place this coming Thursday out of Georgia, WWA 4 out of Rhode Island, Extreme Wrestling Alliance, and out of Tennessee, 127 Pro Wrestling, and out of Utah, Devotion Championship Wrestling. Then on Friday, out of Georgia, Georgia Independent Professional Wrestling and Platinum Championship Wrestling. Out of Indiana, Pro Wrestling Trainwreck. Out of Tennessee, Great South Wrestling Federation and Heavyweight Championship Wrestling, as well as KWF, Resolute Wrestling, and Southern Wrestling Federation. And then also Friday, out of Texas, Lions Pride Sports. Then on Saturday, out of Alabama, Pro South Wrestling and Victory Championship Wrestling. Out of Arkansas, Revolutionary Wrestling Entertainment. Out of Florida, Gangrel's Wrestling Asylum and Generation Championship Wrestling. And out of Georgia, Southern Violence and Wrestling, Southern Wrestling Association. And out of Indiana, Tradition Championship Wrestling. Out of Michigan, two events from Horror Slam. Out of Mississippi, Battle Zone Championship Wrestling. Out of New Jersey, Pro Wrestling Magic. Out of North Carolina, Next Revelation Lucha Libre. Out of Ohio, Ascend Pro Wrestling. And out of Tennessee, All Pro Wrestling, Intense Championship Wrestling Asylum, Revive Pro Wrestling, Tennessee Wrestling Alliance. Out of Texas, Day 2 of Independent Wrestling Expo 3, Metroplex Wrestling, Texas Prodigy Pro. And out of Utah, Day 2 of Devotion Championship Wrestling. And out of West Virginia this Saturday, All-Star Wrestling. And then on Sunday, out of Florida, Gangrel's Wrestling Asylum. Out of Georgia, Mucha Lucha Atlanta. Out of North Carolina, Excalibur Championship Wrestling. And out of Tennessee, School of Morton, and Southern Underground Pro. That's my report for this week. I hope to see you next week. I hope we all have a much better week as we look at the week ahead. Have a good one. My name is Phil Stamper.
All right, and there was Phil giving us some hot piping tea going on in the world of independent wrestling right now. Some not too pleasant things to discuss. A couple companies have essentially been deleted after the actions of a
Canceled.
few.
Yeah,
Yeah,
been canceled.
That's the culture that we're in right now.
Yep.
And I don't think we really need to stay on it too much.
No, and you know what? If fans want to talk about it further, they can go to Ask MCW Cast or send us an email or send us a message. We'll address things here. In fact, that's what we're actually going to be addressing next. Is some of our Coffee Club members have sent in questions, and we've got some fan questions as well. So, Gia, one of our Coffee Club members would like to know if and when. And I'm going to take out the if part. When you get called to WWE to either Raw or SmackDown, who would you like your first match to be against and why? Thank you, Dan, for that question.
For each brand, one would be Charlotte. The reason why is because she's very athletic, she's very gifted, and I can't take my eyes off her. It's something about her that makes me like, all right, I want to kind of wrestle her so that we could go toe to toe and see like how we are with each other. Another person is Bianca Belair. I
love her.
I love her. Like I loved her the moment she entered into the the Mae Young Classic. I love her. She's muscular. She's like everything to me. Like she's beautiful and whatnot, and she's someone who, like I said, she can kick butt. She can go. And another person would be Naomi. Like even in the beginning, like when like they were in the Diva era, she was always athletic. She looked like she had like a fun, happy personality, and I feel like I can kind of see myself in her, and I feel like I could go toe to toe with her as well.
Great. All right. Now I have another question for you. And this pertains to MCW. Who would you like to face? I know earlier in the show tonight you mentioned about seeing Black Wall Street when you were a fan sitting in the front row with your uncle. So we want to know if Amber Rodriguez from Black Wall Street were to return to MCW, could you see yourself in a feud or facing her?
Yes, I want it to happen so bad, and it would be even better if it was for the women's championship anytime, any place, because she is the person that I looked up to for inspiration when I first started off, and for her to, be coming back, it could be any time. I'm prepared for it. I want to make this happen, not only for myself, but also for the MCW fans. It's kind of like a clash of back in the day versus like what's happening now. So it's
I think our fans would 100% be behind seeing the two of you face off.
And that's interesting that came up because I was actually just recently talking with Amber, just touching base through social media, and she mentioned wanting to wrestle you. So I think I could make that happen.
I would love to be right in the middle of that happening. And maybe for nostalgia's sakes, Tara, you could put on the zebra stripes. You remember we used to sometimes have you be like a special guest referee.
I guess it's just a matter of not if, but when.
Yeah.
We're kind of in this, we're still paused, but I think we're getting closer to, closer to coming back. I think it's getting closer and closer every week. And, maybe not if, but when.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I would definitely love to see that. Like I said, be right in the middle of y'all, considering we were there at the beginning of this championship, to then once we're back to getting underway with things, right there to kick off the season with a women's championship match. I'd love it.
That sounds awesome. I think so too, and I think our fans would 100% want to see that as well.
Well, Gia, that's episode 8 of the MCW Cast. We want to thank you again for joining us here.
We really appreciate it. It was a good conversation.
Thank you for having me. Entirely fun. Love to do it again.
We would love to see you again, and I think we may have just spoke a little bit of things into existence with the future of MCW and that championship, and maybe seeing you in the middle of the ring tangling with Amber when we can resume this pause.
Yeah, keep coming on down to the MCW Training Center and kicking butt. I know you're keeping yourself primed and ready for when we come back.
Yes.
Well, with that said, I'm Larry Legend.
I'm Tara.
And I'm Dan.
And we'll see you next time, Tuesday at 8, for another edition of the MCW Cast.
Watch hundreds of hours of MCW Pro Wrestling action at MCWRageTV.com. That's MCWRageTV.com.